All right, hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our live stream demo today. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Matt Ulason, and I am one of the Google Cloud training architects here at Linux Academy, where we teach people how to become professional with Google Cloud, Linux, AWS, and pretty much all the Linux, cloud, and DevOps things. So if this is your first time here, welcome. Glad that you're here. If this is your first time here, what we've been doing for a little over a month is every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Central, so maybe morning or evening where you're at, we have been taking audience suggestions for different demonstrations of what they want to see demonstrated on Google Cloud, and then we go do it. And we've been kind of doing a mixture of kind of going back and forth between more beginner and more advanced topics. So last week we had a pretty advanced topic where we demonstrated how to set up a continuous deployment pipeline using Cloud Build. Pretty heady, pretty advanced topic. But this week we're gonna go ahead and dial it back a bit for a little bit kind of getting started topic of how to really master the command line, specifically how to Gcloud, if you're ever a fan of the alternative titles of Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons, using Google Cloud. So why are we doing all this? Kind of the main theme we've been doing for these live demos over the past month or so is number one, our main objective is to demonstrate how to do something on Google Cloud, obviously. But really, kind of the bigger topic or the bigger theme that we try to shoot for is not just learning something, but learning how to learn something. And what I kind of mean by that is a recurring theme we like to bring up is that no matter where we are in our technology professional journey, all of us tend to start off, or even are still today, like this dog here. You're studying a really complex topic, whether it's Linux, DevOps, Google Cloud, AWS, whatever. And there's just so much there, and it seems so intimidating to be able to get started with. You just have no idea what you're doing, and you just really don't know where to start. And really kind of the theme that I've been wanting to do with a lot of these demos is just kind of show the process of taking a concept that you may or may not be familiar with and kind of getting those points of reference, how to go from knowing nothing to, okay, here's a good point of reference that I can start building up that knowledge to start slowly building up more and more. And then at some point, you are a cloud professional, you're an expert, and everyone thinks you're some sort of a super expert, even though I really don't think I'm that much of an expert still today. So what we're going to do today is we are going to go over how to get started from a beginner's perspective of mastering how to manipulate really everything on Google Cloud. So what do we mean by this, and why is this important? If you're brand new to Google Cloud or you've been using it maybe for a little while, every one of us usually gets started using the web console, which is what we see here. And for very good reason, because this is a very good beginner's perspective. It's very interactive, and you have lots of different guideposts of knowing what exactly you can really do on the platform. So if, for example, you try to figure out, okay, I can create a virtual machine on Compute Engine, how exactly does that work? You can go to your top left menu, menus everywhere. You can go down to Compute Engine. Okay, I can create an instance, nice little create button there. We have some drop-down menus. Okay, I got to give it a name. I got to figure out what region to put it in. What kind of amount of CPUs and memory, boot disks, OS, etc. Everything is very guided as far as setting the boundaries of what you can do and gives you a very good idea of really what kind of different options you have available. And there's really quite a number of options you can choose in here. Thing is, though, once you go to command line, you have that. And you're like, okay, I need to do all of these options here and everything else across all the different services on Google Cloud, and I have 0 point of reference to start with. How the heck do I do that? It's pretty intimidating. So we all get started with the web console for very good reason. The trick is that to really get deep into Google Cloud, and especially working with some of the more advanced services like Cloud Build, working with PubSub, I would say these are maybe some of the more advanced topics. You really have to become familiar with how the command line works, because some services you really can't even do anything at all with the web console. It's all 100% command line focused. So it's an intimidating skill. There's a lot to go over. You can't memorize all of it because there's simply too much of it there. But at least we can get points of reference for knowing how to figure out what it is that you're trying to do. And before we go ahead and jump into it, this is an interactive chat. So I'm seeing my chat window over here. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and pop in any questions that you do have while we're going through the process. I have kind of like a pre-idea of what I want to do, but if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and pop it in our chat there, and I would definitely love to answer your questions. So looking at some questions, Susil asks, is there any pre-requirements? If you're referring to pre-requirements for working with Google Cloud, really the only requirement is that you have a Google Cloud account, either an organization or an individual account. If you're working in the web console, you can simply click the Cloud Shell button right here. And this is actually a web-based command line console that you can interact with. It has all your tools built into it. It comes with all the requirements literally out of the box. You can just jump on in. If you're working from a local machine, Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever, you do have to install the Google Cloud SDK. I'm going to kind of skip the installation process because I really want to jump into the syntax of it today. If people really want to see the installation process, go ahead and say so in chat, and I'll go ahead and circle back to that. But we're just going to jump really right into the meat of how to actually do stuff in Google Cloud. Excellent question. Also, before we get started, we're really jumping into it. The ideas of what we do week by week really come from our audience here, and we've actually made it even easier for you to submit your ideas of what you want to do or what you want to see me go over. In the video description, and I'm also going to go ahead and link it in chat as well, we just have like a very simple Google form setup where you can actually go into it and anonymously, if you feel like you got a dumb question, there are no dumb questions here. You can be completely off the grid. Let me know what kind of demo that you want me to see. Anything, even if something super simple, super complex. We try to do the range from really easy stuff to really complex stuff. If you just have like different Google Cloud questions, but you've been afraid to ask it, go ahead and ask it here. Again, it's anonymous unless you really want me to know your name. And you may see us here on a upcoming lesson in which we do your idea, and you can go ahead and get your question answered. Our awesome L just linked it in chat, and it will be in the video description, so you can go ahead and jump into it as well. Okay, so let's jump into this. We need to be able to go from here, all of our little drop-down menus, and be able to, click and point everything, and be able to do the exact same stuff here. Big jump. How do we get there? Well, I thought it was the best thing we can do is essentially break down how Gcloud commands work. And when I say Gcloud commands, except for cloud storage, which is a little bit of a side route, almost anything you do on Google Cloud is going to be done via Gcloud commands, which you type Gcloud something something something, and it completes your action. And the Gcloud commands it's the primary command line interface with Google Cloud, and you can do literally anything with the command line. So let's break this down. Let's do a very simple example in which we want to create a simple compute engine instance, have all of our different options here, but we're going to do this via command line. What is the consistent breakdown or the consistent pattern of how this works? There's actually a very consistent pattern that once you understand it, it makes things a lot easier. And you can think of it as going from big to small. So we're going to start off our command with big, Gcloud, the entirety of Google Cloud, and then we're going to go to a little bit smaller, a particular service, such as Compute Engine, and they're going to break that down further into a subservice, such as instances, so instances inside of Compute Engine, inside of all of Google Cloud, and then the action that we want to do. So if we want to break this down, if we wanted to create an instance on Compute Engine on Google Cloud, we would create an instance within our instances on Compute Engine on Google Cloud. And the breakdown is the exact same if you work a little bit backwards, starting with Google Cloud, Compute Engine, instances, create. To create an instance on Compute Engine, your command would be Gcloud for Google Cloud, and within Google Cloud, you go to Compute Engine. Within Compute Engine, you'd be going to your instances, and within instances, you would create big Google Cloud, nested inside of it, your service, Compute Engine, your subservice, which some services may not have a subservice, instances, and then your action. That's really the primary construct of, I would say, 95% of different Google Cloud commands. And then within there, you would add your action target. So in this case, we'd be creating an instance called instance 1. So we are creating instance 1, and then you would set all your different options. These are called flags via the Gcloud command line. And each one of these individual options would be a flag in and of itself. Now, there's a lot of options there. There's a lot of possible flags to do. So the one thing to keep in mind is that for the most part, if you don't specify a value, it's not required. It's just going to use all the default flags or default options here. So if I went to create a new instance and I changed absolutely nothing except the instance name and also maybe setting the zone, it would default to everything else in here. Otherwise, I could set individual flags or individual options for everything in there, and we'll cover that here in just a little bit as well. A couple of questions here. Why we use Cloud Shell, submitted by Nathaji. Forgive me if I'm getting your name wrong. Excellent question. So I like using Cloud Shell a lot just because it's a consistent environment, and it is your full Google Cloud command line environment that you have right within the web browser as well. So a little bit of a side route. Excellent question in general. There's a couple different ways you can interact with command line on Google Cloud. One is to use your local machine. So if you got Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever, you can install what's called the Google Cloud SDK tools, or Simple Developers Kit, to be able to interact with everything we're doing as well. In addition, you don't even have to do all that if you want to. Within the web console itself, if you click the Cloud Shell button within a web browser, you can open up a separate tab, and it's the entire command line environment hosted on Google Cloud. It's actually your own private 5 gigabyte virtual machine that you don't pay for, but it's actually completely web-based. So you have your entire command line environment and all the tools already pre-installed. You can just click it and jump right in and get started. I like to use Cloud Shell a lot just because it's an easy-to-get-to consistent environment that anyone can access without having to worry about, okay, maybe someone's on a different version than me. If I just want to jump right in and start doing stuff with the command line without having to mess with local tools, it's really, really good for that. Really good place to get started when you're first getting introduced to command line on Google Cloud. AB asks, what's an easy way to look at the clouds available? Is it like normal bash where you just mention the command followed by help? Excellent question. I'm going to get to that here in just a little bit, so thank you very much for asking that. But yes, there is a good way to see all the different flags available, and actually to get a full reference for everything. So we'll get to that here in just a second. Good question, though. So again, the basic structure, big to small, big item, nested service, nested subservice, what you're going to do, are your little flags, like the little Russian dolls you have, one nested inside of each other. Again, I want to create an instance in our instances on Compute Engine on Google Cloud. Big to small, Gcloud, service, subservice, the action target, basically the name, and our different options. Now, you notice I have like a little asterisk next to subservice here. That's because not every service is going to have a subservice listed. For example, if we were to deploy something on Google App Engine, it would be Gcloud app for App Engine, and then deploy. Completely skip the subservice. So there's always exceptions to the rule, but for about 95% of the time, this is going to be your basic structure. So nice and simple, not much in the way of different routes to go to. Let's go ahead and kick it up a little notch here. So, getting help, like AB asked, how do I do X? How do I know all the different flags, all the different commands available? And there's literally hundreds and hundreds of commands. You're not going to memorize them all. You may feel I have no idea what I'm doing. How do I get help? How do I find out what are all the different commands available? How do I find out how to do all these flags for the web-based equivalent of this? What is my point of reference to get started with? Which is an excellent question to go through. A few different ways we can do this, and this is where I kind of go into the learning how to learn process of getting those points of reference for both general questions and really specific questions as well. First of all, when working with Gcloud commands, regardless of what level you're looking at, if you end it with a 2 dashes and the word help, if via the command line, it'll give you all the different options for that particular level you're working with. So if we want to get help for all the different commands available for under Gcloud Compute, everything in Compute Engine, we can type in Gcloud Compute, 2 dashes help. If we want to get a little bit more narrow and we want to get help on the different options available in compute instances, we can do 2 dashes and help there. And if we want to see all of our different options for creating an instance on Compute Engine, we can do 2 dashes and help on there as well. And if we do a quick demo, let's see, we'll type Gcloud Compute. Okay, so what can I do with the Gcloud Compute command? What's all of our options available from that? 2 dashes and then help. And it's pretty broad there because there's a ton of different options available for Gcloud Compute. These are all the different sub-services you can work with. As you can see, there's a lot. You can work with disks, backend services, addresses. Also keep in mind that all networking functions on Google Cloud are also underneath Compute Engine as well. So everything with firewall, static IP addresses, creating network subnetworks, etc. That's all under Compute. Very, very big umbrella there. So, okay, quite a bit there. There's a lot there. Let's narrow that down a little bit. What can I do underneath Gcloud Compute and specifically dealing with instances? We'll type in Gcloud Compute instances. Actually, is it instances or instance? I always forget. Okay, it is instances. And this will tell you all the different subcommands available under Gcloud Compute instances, getting a little bit more narrow. So let's see, Gcloud wide flags, we got account configuration, you can add labels, add access configuration, you can create an instance like our very, very simple example. You can delete instances, you can list your instances, you can do a lot of stuff with instances, and it just goes on and on. Okay, let's go ahead and narrow this down just a little bit further. What can I do when I am trying to create an instance on Compute Engine on Google Cloud? We'll type Gcloud Compute instances, create, --help. And this gets us more narrowed down information about what to do when creating a Compute Engine instance on Google Cloud. A lot more narrow, still a lot of options available. You may be able to see here you have dozens of options inside of dozens of options inside of dozens of options inside of, well, just one big option. So it gets pretty exponential from there. So, there's a lot there, all via command line. Okay, that's decent, but I don't want to scroll through a bunch of command line stuff. Oh my goodness. How can we find something a little bit easier to navigate? Fortunately, there's other references. If you go to the Google Cloud, basically this web address here, you have a full nested menu web format of all the different Google Cloud SDK options available, which if we go to, let's see, cloud.google.com/SDK/Gcloud/reference. I'm just going to type in Gcloud reference. Have Google find it for me. We scroll down here, we have pretty much the massive pointer reference Bible, whatever you want to call it, for everything you can do on Google Cloud. And you'll notice everything is nested. So you have Gcloud overall, and then you have all your different services, and you have like services nested inside alpha and beta options as well. So it's like everything inside of here, inside of beta and alpha here. So if we wanted to go down to Gcloud Compute, let me make that a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So if we're working with Gcloud and Compute Engine, if I can find it, expand that. This is everything we can do on Compute Engine. We can create addresses. There's a lot there. If we go to instances, so it'd be Gcloud, for reference, Gcloud, Compute, instances, and there's all of our different actions underneath instances we can do there. Create an instance, delete, click on one of these, and it gives you a full rundown of all the different tags and flags and different options available. And again, there's a lot there. Full points of reference. This is really like your primary point of reference for every single possible thing you can do using Gcloud commands. And it's a lot. It's dozens of options inside of dozens of options, and just kind of one rabbit hole after another from there. You're not going to memorize all this unless you got kind of some sort of a superhuman eidetic memory. I certainly do not. So this point of reference is definitely very good. Another good question to ask for point of reference. I have no idea what I'm doing. Google it. Now, that sounds kind of like a pedantic or kind of like a cliche answer, but if there's like a very specific thing I'm wanting to do, you could definitely scroll through this, which is a great thing to do, but just go to a simple Google search and just type in, let's say I want to know how to initialize a particular API say maybe I want to work with Kubernetes engine, but I need to initialize the API first, which you can do via the web console, but we're doing command lines here. I would just type in Gcloud enable API because I want to enable an API via Gcloud commands. First result's going to be enabling an API in your cloud project. And how these typically work is it gives both the web console and the command line example. And to enable an API in a project, your command is Gcloud services enable and your service name. And this is a little bit different in which you have to use command line to get the full list of service names available. Just to demonstrate that, it's kind of funny to watch, but if you type in Gcloud services list and available, give it a second. These are all the different APIs you can enable. So you would type in Gcloud services enable, and let's say if we wanted to enable the Kubernetes engine API, there's a big list here. We'll do App Engine because I can see it. If I want to enable App Engine, I would type in Gcloud services enable, Gcloud services enable, your service name, and the service name would be appengine.googleapis.com. So Google it. For another example, let's say how do I create a Kubernetes cluster using Gcloud commands? Let's type in Gcloud create Kubernetes cluster. Gcloud create Kubernetes cluster. The first result will typically take you to how to create a cluster. There's a quick start here available as well. It even showed like the actual Gcloud reference as well. And it shows you how to create a single zone cluster, create a multi-zone cluster. And the reference is your Gcloud command here as well. So again, starting from big, Gcloud, container, Kubernetes engine service itself, working with clusters on Kubernetes engine, creating, and then your different syntax from there. So for pretty much anything that you want to do using the Google Cloud SDK, if you just Google it, usually one of the first results, if you include the word Gcloud in with your Google query, will take you directly to the page that says how to do the specific thing that you want to do. So that's another way to find out, trying to figure out what exactly that you want to be doing. Also, incredibly handy tool for getting really specific with the different tags available. Let's say, for example, you want to create a very certain type of compute engine instance with a certain OS, different tags on it, a non-default disk size, non-default, lots of other options as well, but you don't know what all those individual flags are to go ahead and do that. What's very useful is that for the majority of web console items, it also gives an equivalent command line cross-reference as well. So let me back up here a bit and show you what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance. We'll call it instance 1. I'm going to go ahead and put it in US Central because that's where I am located at. I'm going to go ahead and do a non-default boot disk. We're going to go ahead and let's do CentOS 7. We're going to make it a 100 gigabyte disk. And we're going to go ahead and allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic. There is a command line flag for each one of these options we did here. We could figure that out by going in through the reference page here. But easier method is that now that we have these settings set up in our web console, if we go down here where it says equivalent command line, this command line reference right here is the exact commands and all the flags necessary to go ahead and do what it is that you want to do. Now it's going to go ahead and throw in all the flags for all the available options, whether it's a default option or one that you have customized. So it's a little bit probably more than what you need. If I cut it off after where it says Zone US Central 1C and chopped off all of this, it would still create the instance. It would only do the default options, but this is basically giving all the different options available. And it looks like for here as well, since we want to do allow HTTP and HTTPS, that also requires creating firewall rules on your network. So it also gives you the commands for creating a firewall rule. So if we break it down, it's Gcloud within Compute Engine. Now specifying the project, which if you set a default variable, you don't have to do that. Within Compute Engine, our subservice is firewall rules. So Gcloud, our service, our subservice, firewall rules, our action, which is create, And this is going to be the firewall rule name it automatically creates called default allow HTTPS. It also tags the instances with a network tag up in here and matches to that tag there, which that gets into a firewall lesson, a little bit of a side road. But if you were to copy all of this, these are your Gcloud commands for creating your instance with your specific options and flags, and also creating the firewall rules necessary, where if we were to copy this, paste in the Cloud Shell, it's now creating that compute engine instance via Gcloud commands, and then when the instance is made, it's going to go ahead and create the 2 firewall rules from there. So, cross-reference for getting very, very specific options that you may want to reuse over and over again. Another tip for how do I do all this stuff, take notes. My memory isn't really that great, so whenever I'm working with something where I'm using the web console cross-reference or looking something up on our master reference page or whatever, and it's something that I may want to go back and reference later on, I make a notes and store it away somewhere. So for example, I have a folder, if I can bring it up here and get my menu bar to work, called scripts, that I have a whole bunch of scripts and also just simple text notes in for different stuff that I want to do, that I want to be able to refer to over and over again to do just different particular actions. So for example, if you were here last week when we went over Cloud Build, I have what I call a superscript that I use to really one-touch kick off the entire Cloud Build process without having to go over the web console for each individual action. And I make notes. I take lots of notes. Some of them are more organized than others. I also have a lot of notes in Evernote. Of course, there are many, many other note-taking applications out there. If I can get my menu back up here again. For example, I have like the entire list of those enabled APIs that we got from command line, so I don't have to go through the list the whole time. So for example, I wanted to enable the Kubernetes Engine API. I have my list copy and pasted here, so I know which one I can just copy and paste and plug it into from there. Notes are very good for just really kind of getting those points of reference for all the different little pieces that you learn, and eventually you just learn more and more as you go along. Let's see, some other questions here. Project shell scripting. Yes, Nathology asked a very good question. I was actually going to get into that for a topic coming up here in just a minute, where you can take this stuff and put it into shell scripts. And let me make sure I'm not losing myself here. Right, so where really the power of this comes into play, and why you really want to learn how to do or work with Gcloud commands, is that for a really complex scenario where you want to set up a whole cloud build pipeline in which you're creating a Kubernetes cluster, you're enabling the APIs, you can do all that via the web console, but it's a lot of clicking steps, lots of room for human errors. But what you can do, though, is that once you get the process down and get your command line syntax down, if I can find my script again. Yep, I lost my script. Bear with me, I closed something I did not want to close. Where this comes in is that you can script out a very large number of steps. In this case, with this script here, I'm enabling all the APIs I need for a fresh project, cloning a GitHub repository, creating a new Kubernetes cluster, deploying an application to that Kubernetes cluster, starting a cloud build pipeline. If I were to do this using the web console, there'd be a lot of clicking and pointing, take me about a good 5 to 10 minutes to do all this. However, if I'm able to use Gcloud commands, and in this case gsutil commands as well for cloud storage, to script it out, I can start a brand new project, kick my script off, come back and grab a cup of coffee, and about 5-10 minutes later, it's all done, and I don't do anything. It's all automated. I'm nice and lazy, so it does it all for me. Let's see. Someone asked, where do I have all these commands? Local system. Okay, so excellent question. Someone's asking, where do you have all these commands on your local system, or where do you have to run the commands? That goes back to, you can either use the Cloud Shell, or you can install the Google Cloud SDK, which I kind of skipped over for this demonstration just because I wanted to jump into the actual syntax. Let's go ahead and back up here a little bit, because that's an excellent question. How do you actually get access to all these commands? And that uses an application, what's called the Google Cloud SDK, that you can either run in Cloud Shell, basically on Google Cloud itself, or on a local machine in a terminal environment. Now, if you're going to run it on the local machine, you have to do a little bit of an installation. And to do that, we're just going to do search for Google Cloud SDK. And the process is pretty straightforward. What you would need to do is just choose whatever operating system you're on, Mac, Windows, Linux, etc. And it gives you the steps, pretty good step-by-step for actually installing the Google Cloud SDK application on your machine. And then once it's installed, you can initialize it, which it goes through the instructions here as well. And then once you go through basically this install and setup process, you then have access to all these commands here. And if we're doing pretty good on time here in a little bit, I may circle back and get back to that. I just really kind of want to jump into the meat of the commands there. Let me go ahead and pop this link in the chat so you can go ahead and get started if you do want to go over the instructions, if we don't have time for it today, of how to install the SDK on there, because that could probably be like a demo lesson on its own. We got about 30 to 45 minutes we want to do this. But excellent question on that. So on your local machine, you have to install the environment, and it's pretty step-by-step for whatever operating system you're on. And then once you're set up, you're initialized, you're authenticated with Google Cloud Platform, you then have access to all these commands, whether you're working on your local machine or working within the Cloud Shell environment here as well. So excellent question on that. I wish I had more time to go over that. Maybe we'll do it on the future demo. So that is an excellent point. Okay, again, if you have any questions, we're moving along. If I feel like I skipped over something, definitely ask, because I want to make sure that no one is confused or anything. Okay, so moving along. Other Gcloud command that's a little bit different from what we were talking about here is how to configure your environment using the Gcloud Config function. And how this works is we're not working with any particular service, but it is kind of like one of those main setup or environment configuration things that you got to do. And that's where you set default items like a default project, a default zone, a default region. Otherwise, whenever you want to type in a command, you have to specify your project, zone, and region flag every single time, which, well, that can get a little bit annoying. And that is done. If I go ahead and clear my screen here, let me try again. I cannot type. There we go. Using Gcloud Config lets you see what your current environment is. So where am I? Using Gcloud Config list. And what this means is that whenever I do any Gcloud commands in my shell session, these are the variables it's assuming. It's assuming I'm running it as this account here. It's assuming that I'm running it in the PW Data Engineer project. I don't have a default zone or region, so it doesn't have any assumptions on my zone or region, so I have to go ahead and either manually specify those, or I can go ahead and use defaults as well. How do you use variable is a question that Pranish is asking. Typically, a variable is set by using a double dash, depending on what you're doing. So if, for example, let me go ahead and do that, answer your question real quick before I jump into this. Let's say, for example, I'm deploying a compute engine instance, and I want to go ahead and specify, we'll say, a machine type of 2 CPU, 7.5 gigs of memory. It's known as an N1 standard 2 machine type. If I go to my command line here, everything, it's kind of small, but everything after here with the double dashes, those are our variables. So it's usually done by doing 2 dashes, your variable. And you can either use an equal sign or a space. I think either one works, but it'd be your 2 dashes, a variable, equal sign, and your actual variable value. So for example, if I wanted to specify a N1 standard 2 machine type, which is 2 CPU, 7.5 gigs of memory, if I can find it, my variable would be 2 dashes, machine type, N1 standard 2. So if I want to go ahead and put that into practice, we'll just say Gcloud on Compute Engine. I'm working with instances. I want to create one. We'll go ahead and call this instance 2. Now, a required variable, if not set as a default, is your zone. So I'm going to go ahead and set my zone to US Central 1. I believe A is one of the zones, right? Let me make sure. Central 1, we'll do Central 1C. If I want to set a machine type, which is going to be my essentially CPU and memory variable, that's going to be machine type equals N1 standard 2. I think I typed it correctly. Let me go ahead and double check my cross-reference in case my memory is just a little bit off. Okay, machine-type equals N1-standard-2, which looks correct. So this is setting a custom variable of a custom machine type, leaving everything else as default, with also my variable of my zone, which is required of US Central 1C. It's going to go ahead and create a custom machine type of N1 standard 2. Let's see. Rogerium's also asking Ubuntu machine. Okay, excellent question. So if you want to specify an Ubuntu OS, so the public Ubuntu image, easy way to get cross-reference is in the web console. Go to change. Choose whatever flavor of Ubuntu you want to use. We'll do the newest long-term support version. Select. Go back to our command line cross-reference. And we'll want to look for the image, which is kind of small. Okay, where it says image equals this string here. And it's actually specifying the project is pulling that from because it's a publicly hosted image. It would be this 2 dashes image, the actual full image name, pretty long string there. And you also got to specify the image project as well. So if you want to carry that over into Cloud Shell as well, we want to do the latest version of Ubuntu 18.04. I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance. We need to go ahead and give it a different name. So I'm going to arrow on over. We'll just call it Ubuntu. And we're going to specify the variable of our public image, which is going to be 2 dashes. Image is pointing to the image itself. And we need to specify the project we're pulling that image from, which is the publicly hosted one that Google maintains to actually pull that from. If we hit enter, we are specifying our CPU and memory amount. And we're also specifying using an Ubuntu image as well. That'll take about 10 or 20 seconds, and we will have that equivalent machine based on those variables I just used in there. Again, try to figure out how to do it. The learning how to learn portion is the cross-reference is a fantastic tool. If you want to get a little bit more detailed, you can go to that Gcloud reference, all your nested references from here. You can go to Gcloud Compute, Instances, Create, and you have your full list here. For that specific instance, though, we're trying to figure out the specific flag you want to use because there's quite a bit there. I really like using the Gcloud cross-reference in the web console for my preferred route to go. One of many, but that's really my preferred one to do. And they'll tell you really exactly what you need to know from there. Let's see. Is config global or project-based? Yes, all the above. So when you set a config... Okay, let me answer AB's question. I'll get back to, forgive me if I'm messing up your name, Rogerium's question. When you're working with your configuration, the configuration you're working with is in your project. Now, let's see, setting the config for the organization, that's actually a good question. I don't know the immediate answer. Let's see if we can find out. So if you want to put in organization-wide controls, let's just do, I'm going to type in Gcloud Config, maybe organization. I'm actually doing this off the cuff right now to see if we can get this figured out, but just kind of going over the how do I do X, trying to practice what I preach here. Okay, so I know it's Gcloud config set. Let's take a look in here. I'm just going to do a search for the word organization. Well, we don't have anything underneath Gcloud config set itself. We have some underneath organizations. It looks like under organizations, the majority of what you can do is work with IAM policies, so basically organization-wide IAM, which is essentially access roles. It doesn't look like you can do much else except for that organization-wide. It looks like when you're using the Gcloud config function, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I could be wrong, those are all project-based only. So you're setting the configuration for an individual project. Excellent question. If someone disagrees with me and can point me out where I may be incorrect, definitely feel free to point that out because I don't want to, be giving wrong information. unintentionally. So excellent question on that. Let's see. Rugger's asking where can you use a VPC and also subnets to launch an instance from the GCP console. If you're talking about how to do those via Gcloud commands, excellent question. We're going to actually do the exact same technique again using the cross-reference to do that. So really, really good question on that. I'm loving these questions so far. We're running a little bit long on time, but hey, if you got questions, I'll stick around as long as you want to stick around. Okay, so let's create a VPC and create some subnets using the Gcloud command line. And let's use the web console to basically give the answer for us so we don't have to think about it and get kind of lost, reading through a bunch of command line stuff. Let's say I want to go ahead and create a VPC or VPC network. So we can go to Compute Engine, actually VPC network by itself. VPC networks here. I'm going to go ahead and create a test network. Again, I'm doing everything via the web console right now, the long method, but I'm going to use that to get the command line to basically shorten the process. We're just going to do, let's do a test network here. This is going to be our network name. We'll go ahead and create a custom subnet. So it's going to be our subnet portion. We're just going to go ahead and we'll call it subnet A. We need to give it a region. I'm just going to do, again, US Central 1. You could, of course, do whatever closest to you. I do have to give it an IP address range for the subnet, which is used using CIDR notation. We do a /24 subnet. Everything looks good. Web console, creating our network, creating our subnetwork. How do we use that via Gcloud commands? Good question. Let's go back down to the very bottom. We have our command line reference here. And here is how to create this network called test network, and also create our subnet A within our test network using Gcloud command lines here. So there's your answer right there. We'll use the web console to set up how we want the first time, get our Gcloud command line cross-reference, and we can then copy and paste this into a script if we want to script this out. That way, if we want to quickly create this again in a new project, boom, there it is right there, nice and easy. So yes, there is your cross-reference and your answers right there. Excellent, excellent question. Thank you for that. Let's see here. Oh yeah, so Gcloud Config. Setting your environment. So by default, if you don't set a default project, a default region, a default zone, every time you type in some sort of a command, you have to specify a project equals project ID. Or you have to, tag a default zone, specify your zone, specify your region. That can get, a little bit annoying. Sometimes you may want to shorten that process. What the config function does is it lets you set a default project, which is required for that, but you also have the ability to set a default region, a default zone, and I think there's some other defaults you can set as well, that whenever you do something like creating a new instance, creating a Kubernetes cluster, doing a bunch of other stuff, it's going to assume those projects and zones so you don't have to manually specify it every single time. So for kind of the placeholder of where am I, you are here, what is my defaults? If you type in Gcloud config list, this shows you, okay, you are here. Your current project, whenever you run Gcloud commands, is going to assume the PW Data Engineer project. We don't have a default region or zone, so unless we define one, we have to manually specify that every time. So say, for example, that I don't want to specify a zone every single time I create a new compute engine instance. I want to default to the same zone every single time. To do that, you would type in Gcloud config set, and whatever you want to set. In this case, I'd be wanting to configure a default zone, and then type in your zone name. So, for example, I don't want to type in US Central 1A for my /zone equals tag every single time I create a new instance. I can set my placeholder to default to that zone, basically have it assume that zone. So I would type in Gcloud config, Gcloud config set compute zone. Let me make sure I am doing this correctly. And that would be US Central 1. I think I've been using US Central 1, so we'll go along with that. The property has been updated. So now if I go back to Gcloud config list, again, where am I? Why am I here? it is now showing my default zone as being US Central 1C, which means that if we go back to creating yet another new instance, so on Google Cloud, I'm going to go into Compute Engine. I'm going to work with instances. I'm going to go ahead and create one. I'm just going to go ahead and call this, we'll just call it test 3. I'm not going to specify the zone this time because I set my variable to default to that. It's going to assume I'm creating it in US Central 1C every single time without having to manually type it in every single time from there. Give that a brief moment. It's just going to do the rest of my defaults without having to manually set all the flags beyond the defaults. And it'll be done in just a moment as well. So that is how to create your initial environment that you're working in. And it's done from there, again, without having to manually specify that. Let's see. How to launch an instance and test VPC, which you have created. Excellent question. We're going to use the same technique again. So let's go back to here. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and create this real quick. Since I'm in the web console here, I'm just going to go ahead and get that out of the way. We're creating a new network called testnet. We're going to wait about 30 seconds, in which case I'm going to drink some coffee. Is there a list of configurations that can be set? A couple different ways you can answer that question. In the Google Cloud SDK, especially when working on a local machine, you can have different configurations, which is basically all of this, and you can actually switch between different configurations with a whole bunch of different defaults and variables. And that's actually done by, I may have to look that up. Let me get back to that question, because we can look that up. Let me go ahead and get Ragaram's question up first, but excellent question. We'll go ahead and circle back to that. Let's see if that network is done yet. Yes, it is. Test network, subnet A. Let's go ahead and create a test instance in that network and subnetwork we just now set up. And it is in US Central 1, which I need to remember that. So back to Compute Engine. Because I am not creative with names, I'm going to go ahead and call it test 4. Now we do know that we have to be in the same region as our subnet. So we're going to go ahead and choose US Central 1. Our zone doesn't really matter in this case. We're going to leave most of our defaults here. We're going to go down to our additional options, go to networking. We are going to specify our test network. We are in subnet A. Everything else is good. You can do static IP addresses and stuff. We're not going to worry about that for now. And we are again going to go down to our command line cross-reference. That's really the magic key there. This is such an insanely useful tool. I'm surprised more people don't know about it. But I cannot make myself look as smart as I tend to make myself look if not for this command line cross-reference. Kind of like a little bit of a cheat sheet to give you the easy answers. Command line cross-reference is going to be here. We have the beta tag because it's using some networking features that are currently in beta. Don't worry too much about that right now. But if we look through all of our different flags here, we are specifying subnet A here. Now, what's interesting about the Compute Engine setup is that you don't specify the network, you only specify the subnet. And I believe in working with an individual project, each of your subnet names have to be unique across multiple networks. So by specifying only the subnet name, which is unique for the entire project regardless of network, it automatically defaults to that correct network as well. It's a little bit odd the way they have it structured. It kind of makes sense, but just kind of FYI on that. So the specific tag that you're looking for specifying the custom subnet on the custom network is this _subnet equals subnet A variable here. This is what specifies what subnet on what network you're creating your instance on with that variable right there. So excellent question on that. Thank you very much for asking that. Let's see. Pranish asks, is there a list of configs that can be set? So configs can be interpreted a couple different ways. So let me know if what I'm talking about is what you're referring to, if I'm off base. When using the Gcloud SDK, you can actually save different configurations. Just set region. Where can I find the rest? Oh, okay. Like you set the region. Where can you find the rest of them that can be set using the Gcloud Config command? Okay, I think I understand what you're talking about. Let me clear my screen here. Okay, let's say, for instance, you don't know what projects you have available in your organization that you want to go ahead and set a configuration for. You can use a list command on that. I think I have it on the slide here as well. I don't. Okay. That would actually be Gcloud projects. So, okay, so what projects do I have here available in my organization? You type in Gcloud projects list. And this lists the different projects I have within my particular organization. It gives the unique project ID and the friendly name as well, which for the most part is the same as the actual project ID itself. So that'd be a way to list out your projects. So then if you want to know what projects you have available to set your configuration to, you then type in Gcloud Config, set, because we're going to set or change something, project, and then you choose whatever project ID you want to switch over to. We're just going to go ahead and we'll do PW monitoring just to set one. And assuming I did this correctly, it updated on our property. Notice that it now says PW monitoring off to the side of our shell prompt here. And also with Cloud Shell specifically, it'll give you the project ID up from here so you know exactly where you're at. And if we type in Gcloud config list, it'll show that all of our commands we're doing is now in our PW monitoring project. I'm going to go ahead and set back over to our data engineer one just so I don't get myself lost. Now, if you want to know what all regions are available, there is a specific command for that for listing all the regions. I don't know it off the top of my head, so let's go find it out real quick. I'm going to type in Gcloud. We'll just say list regions maybe. Gcloud compute regions list. Displays all the compute engine regions in a project. So let's see, Gcloud compute regions list. So let's see if that does it. Here's all different regions available. So if I want to know what region I can set for my Gcloud config set, we want to set a default region. We then go from this list here, type in Gcloud config set, leave us compute/region. If you didn't know this, you could always go to your Google Cloud SDK underneath config. Gcloud config. Oh, so I'm still under compute. Lots of different nested rabbit holes there. Gcloud config set. This is everything you can set. And let's see if I want to set a default region. Let's do a search for the word region. Yep, positional arguments, let's just compute/region. That would actually set your region from there. If I want to set my default region to, let's say, US East 1. Update a property. So now any command that I put in that usually specifies a set region, it will automatically default to that US East 1 region, which we have here, but we have a different region, a different zone, which is a little bit off base, so I probably wouldn't want to do that actually in practice. Let me know if that answers your question or if I'm still a little bit off base here. Just like you set project, region, what else? Oh, what else can you set in config? Okay, excellent question. Sorry, I misinterpreted that, Pranish. So what all can you do with the config set? From a snapshot, everything you see here in our config list is stuff you can set a variable to within your compute Gcloud config set. So you can set a default region, default zone, default project, default account. Let's actually go back to our reference here. Gcloud config set, we're in that menu here, and let's see if it lists out what properties we can do from here. Okay, so these are different properties you can set. You can set the account. You can set basically everything here. You can set a regional backend service. Set your project. Set there's a lot. Pretty much anything you see in this list here are different variables you can set. If you go up a little bit further, you can set some other properties. You can set a default region, set a default zone. And I believe this goes into some more detail about the individual properties you can set inside of there as well. So yeah, that's basically, there's quite a bit you can do, and that is the reference you can do to actually drill it down. let me know if that answers your question or if I'm still a little bit off base, and if so, I do apologize. Let's see. Roger's asking, we're planning on our setup from AWS to GCP. Definitely recommended. I love Google Cloud, especially if you're into big data and machine learning. I don't think really anyone does big data and machine learning better than Google Cloud, so definitely a good choice for that. Hey, you know what, Roger? Let me go ahead and type my email here in chat. I don't give out my mobile number, but go ahead and shoot me an email with some questions. I definitely love getting questions from other people, as long as you don't sign me up for spam lists, which I trust y'all. Okay, that is my email address there, mattu@linuxacademy.com. Feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, I'd like to have a conversation with you, kind of see what's on your mind, and we can go from there. Okay, we are running pretty long on time, but hey, again, if you're not bored, I'm not bored yet. Let's go and go over a couple other things here. One last thing I want to go over before we wrap up is now I want to go over something completely different. So there's really a neat feature currently in alpha, which means, okay, it's not even ready for beta yet, so, you know, it may break, but that's why it's in alpha, called interactive mode. Actually, what is a good way to submit suggestions for future live sessions? This is an excellent question. We have a variety of ways. You can shoot me an email. You can type in a chat here. Also, we have a Google Form set up that L-linked. We're going to go ahead and type it in chat here again. If you go to that link there, you can anonymously, or you can give your name if you want to as well, submit an idea for what you want to see. So basically, click that link, say, hey, I want you to demonstrate this, whether it's a beginner topic, advanced topic. We try to go back and forth. Yeah, let me know what you want to see via that form, and I'll probably do it. It's as simple as that. Okay, so last thing I want to go over before we wrap up here is something that's kind of experimental right now on Google's side, which is why it's still currently in alpha, which means it may break, but, well, it's in alpha. So, but it's pretty cool, though. It's called interactive mode. And basically how that works is it's kind of like a guidepost of kind of guiding you along, kind of how the web console does it, but in command line format. It's actually kind of cool. Let's go ahead and check this out. It's better if I just demonstrate versus trying to explain it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Gcloud Alpha Interactive. Interactive mode is engaged. So what this does is, without any sort of interactive mode, you know, again, we're typing everything from scratch, typing in Gcloud compute instances create. We have no idea if that's going to work until we actually type the command in and hit enter, and then we got to get feedback if there's an error. Oh, you're doing this wrong, and figure something out. This is actually, as you type, kind of guiding you along what you can actually do and tell you, hey, this command's not correct, or this is what you want to go from here. Let me show you how it works. So let's go back to the very simple create a compute engine instance example. If I type in Gcloud, and okay, it's already given me the full list of different options I can do from there. So I can do alpha, app, beta. Now, do I scroll down? This tells you everything you can do. It basically gives you the next available command from there. So let's say I want to do something on compute. Let's say I type in C. And it gives all these C options from there. Okay, is it compute? Is it compute-engine? Well, it's just compute. So it's basically kind of giving you an interactive real-time feedback about what the next possible available command is. Compute, cool. All right, so I'm on compute. I want to do something with instances. So is it instances, instance create? I'm not quite sure. I'm just going to type in in. Could we have instance groups, instance templates, instances? So we have all of our options from there. Well, instances looks correct, so let's go ahead and arrow down, hit on that. Well, actually messed up a little bit because I shouldn't have hit enter. So I want to create an instance. So we type in C. Okay, so we know it's create. And okay, so now it's giving me the next guidance from here underneath. Okay, what's my vernacular for creating an instance? Underneath this green line here, it says, okay, now we need to set the name of your instance to create. It tells you what to put in next. So I'm going to do in like test 3. I think that one's taken, so let's go ahead and do test 4. Okay, now what do I do? Oh, here's all my different tags and variables I can set. So, okay, let's see. I want to go ahead and set a disk. Oh, okay, so I just type in disk. Now, what do I do for the disk? Oh, hey, it's the actual command line reference underneath it as well. So basically what this is basically kind of a guided path of how to work your way through a Gcloud command, and it basically kind of gives you what the next step is from there. So exactly what we did before, but you have this like little pop-up and underneath reference of, okay, here's like, what your next step is. It's kind of like doing that Gcloud --help, but the help is always there and available for you to look at, like in a little separate pane, and it updates as you go on. So it's kind of cool. It's an alpha. But if you want to kind of, explore, what you can do when you get to different nested layers of using Gcloud commands, it's kind of a fun little thing to do from there. If you want to get out of interactive mode, just type in exit, and we're out of there. Let's see, other questions here. You got a bunch of suggestions. Yes, send us suggestions. In fact, you know what? I don't think I set the form up for multiple suggestions. Maybe you can hit enter and just do one line. I may have messed that form up. If it's not the case, just submit multiple forms, I guess. It won't bother me at all. Okay, some other questions here. Next session, we are expecting to set up sample project in GCP. Yeah, I may do that. We'll set up a sample project, kind of go over some of the nuts and bolts, kind of starting from scratch. So very good idea on that. Can you prepare default free training course for Google Cloud? Okay, so Mythology asked a very good question. On Linux Academy right now, I think through the end of September, someone correct me, or if that's expired, we have the Google Cloud Essentials course for free, and that will actually go over the basics of how to set up Compute Engine, which is IIAS. If I'm wrong on that, someone, if we don't have that for free anymore, please pipe up in there before I make myself look like a doofus. But yeah, we actually, you know what? Hold on, I don't want to tell you something wrong here. Give me 1 second. Help me out. Am I on base with that or not? It's either last month or this month where we had the Google Cloud Essentials course for free, which goes through, if you sign up with a Linux Academy account, free community edition, which means free. You don't have to pay for it. We have courses for free every month, either on a monthly or a quarterly basis. If you go into that link and you sign up for the free community edition account, it's no charge to you. So you can actually go through the full Google Cloud Essentials course, assuming that it's actually, I forget if it's available for free last month or this month, to be able to go through that. Also, if it's not free for some reason, we do have a free 7-day trial, so you can go ahead and sign up. And if you can blow through the course in 7 days, more power to you. You can go ahead and jump in with that to get a lot more hands-on than the 45 minutes to an hour we have available here today. So excellent suggestion on that. There's a free, yes. Thank you, El, for making me look somewhat competent. Let's see here. Set up a small website. Setting up a small website on Google Cloud. Okay, so maybe like a WordPress site or something like that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, definitely. Go to that Google form. Put in the suggestion. I'm going to kind of use it as my official point of reference. I'm going to go through the chat later on as well. But the form, make sure that I don't overlook it because I can get a little bit squirrel-headed sometimes. Let's see. Okay, commas work for multi-suggestions, so good on that. Excellent. Cool. So I've run out of suggestions for the guided tour here. Like I said, I'm available here as long as you want. This wraps up my official guide through here. But really the main takeaway I want to do here is working with Gcloud commands is really one of those fundamental skills that you really have to master, especially if you're going to script out a sequence of commands repeatedly. And also to get into some of the more hardcore functions such as cloud build and some other functions like that, which you have to do via command line. Really big mountain, really intimidating. There are some really good guideposts of how to go from very little knowledge over to knowing a lot. If I go back to my second tab here, using a combination of the SD Cloud reference, using your --help commands, or just simply doing Google searches for how do I do this on Google Cloud. That's a real good way to start building really a foundational layer of how command lines on Google Cloud work. And if there's interest in going over how to install the Google Cloud SDK, I may do that in an upcoming session as well. Again, I just wanted to jump in just because of the time reasons. We can definitely cover that. Main thing is, I know we all start off here having no idea what you're doing. You don't have to stay there. Learning is a long, slow process, but if you really kind of break it down one little piece at a time, You can learn a lot, and that's really where people's lives get changed. Is how it definitely changed my life, and yeah, that's why I like doing what I do. I don't have anything else specific to go over. Okay, Security Essentials is free this month. Google Cloud Essentials is not free this month. But if you want to blow through the course in 7 days, sign up for a free trial and give it a shot. More power to you. Thank you all for watching here today. I'm going to go ahead and probably stop the streamer for a second, but leave chat up. Otherwise, if you got any questions, something to demonstrate, pop it in chat now before I can go ahead and jump on that. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. Go ahead and submit the ideas you want to see for upcoming demos, beginners, advanced, dumb questions you're afraid to ask. There are no dumb questions here. Yeah, you're going to tell me what I'm going to do here in the upcoming weeks. So whether it is a beginner's topic or advanced topic, that's totally up to you. So let me know what you want to see. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. We will be doing this every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Central. Also, every Wednesday, we have what we call Google Cloud Weekly, which is about like a little 3-minute vlogcast on the same YouTube channel. For the latest in Google Cloud news, I think this week we had big news that the Cisco Hybrid Cloud Platform is available, and also game matchmaking services, which is open source, is available as well. Pretty cool stuff. Go check it out. Otherwise, subscribe to our Linux Academy YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about how to become a Linux Cloud DevOps Master, go ahead and check out Linux Academy itself. We have free courses up all the time, and even beyond that, if you want to get yourself certified, if you want to get unstuck where you're at right now to one of those crazy high-level IT positions that you think is possibly unattainable, we can help you get there, get you certified on whatever cloud or Linux or DevOps thing you want. And yeah, we change lives. It's pretty cool stuff. Otherwise, thank you all for joining, and I'll see you next week. As I try to hit the stop streaming button. All right, now I'll see you next week. Sorry about that. Thank you all again for joining.